Hey guys, welcome to CraterMania. I'm your host, the man they call Crater, and I'd like to welcome you guys back to day 3 and the conclusion of Godzilla Fest. Um, and this will be number 140 through 144 in my 500 movies in 2025 series. Um, First of all, before I get started, I just want to thank all of you guys who have been with me for all 3 days of this Godzilla Fest that I put together. Just showcasing the first 15 Godzilla films in the Godzilla franchise, which is better known as the Showa era from 1954 to 1975. And I'm here at the end of to talk about these last 5 films of the Showa era, and what a hell of a 5 films it is to talk about. Um, and I guess we could just go ahead and jump into this. But one other thing before I do get started, I just want to show something really quick that I had a friend send to me last night, and as you guys know, I am a big wrestling fan. And I watched Monday Night Raw this past Monday, but I completely missed this apparently. So my friend sent me this photo. It's a photo from backstage when Bianca Belair goes into Adam Pearce's office, um, and they're having this conversation. But what's interesting is this poster that's on the wall in the background. And let me go ahead and pull this up because I completely missed this when I watched this on Monday. So I don't know if I don't think I can zoom in on that, but that is a King Kong versus Godzilla poster. And it's advertising, I guess, showing the movie in Glasgow, which is where Raw was at this past Monday. So I thought that was really cool. Thought that was super cool that that they showed that, and I just completely missed that this past Monday. But yeah, I wanted to show that really quick because I wanted to say thanks to my friend who sent that to me last night. I thought that was super cool to show here on the show tonight. Um, but yeah, so like I said, this has been a super fun time. Doing this whole these all 3 days of Godzilla Fest, just talking about these movies, who that have been really special to me, since I was a kid, and just to kind of share that enthusiasm that I have for them with you guys. That's really important to me as well. Um, but let's go ahead and get started, I guess, with the first movie of the last 5 films in the Showa era of the Godzilla franchise. Um, so, in that first film is going to be Godzilla versus Hedorah, and excuse me, sorry, I had to clear my throat there. So Godzilla versus Hedorah from 1971. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's talk about this movie. So it's often known by another title, Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. And if you haven't watched this movie, if you're a Godzilla fan and you haven't watched this movie, you're really missing out on a very strange gem. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in a really good way, because, I mean, this movie is very mind bending. It's very eco conscious and just like I said, it's frankly weird, but in a good way. And so if you haven't seen this one yet, and you're a Godzilla fan, you're really missing out on a very truly unique and just unforgettable Godzilla film. So what is it exactly? So simply put, it is a Godzilla film that is like no other. So it was released smack dab in the middle of the Godzilla Showa era, and it's kind of a stark departure in tone and style and the message that's captured in the film, kind of compared to the previous Godzilla films. Um, and while it still features Godzilla and all his glory, Hedorah feels less like a typical monster brawl and more of a bizarre like fever dream that's channeled through this like 1970s environmental PSA. Um, and honestly, I think that's what makes it so good. That's what makes it brilliant in its own way. Um, so the the person that directed this movie name was Yoshimitsu Banno, and he was a newcomer, to filmmaking with the Godzilla franchise, um, and this wasn't just a just any ordinary Godzilla film for him. And, this was clearly a passion project for him in film, and he really brought this kind of distinct visual style, um, kind of incorporating these kind of psychedelic animations in the film, and it's like a lot of experimental editing and it kind of gives it a really unsettling atmosphere that really sets this movie apart from the other Godzilla films. So, um, and the director here, Bano, he wasn't afraid to, I think, push boundaries, and kind of inject that social commentary, into this kind of giant monster formula. Um, and I think for that, we Godzilla fans kind of owe him this kind of huge debt of gratitude. He gave us something that was truly special, I think, and memorable with this one. Um, so the story of Godzilla versus Hedorah is kind of deceptively simple, but yeah, it's packed with all these different layers of meaning, and it really begins with this kind of series of these unsettling events where there's like mysterious tadpole-like creatures found washed ashore, and all the sea life is dying, and this kind of grotesque, like pulsating mass is like growing in these polluted waters of Japan. Um, so this mass is kind of fueled by human pollution, and it ends up evolving into what is Hedorah, this smog monster. And he is a creature that literally just thrives on toxic waste and spews all this sulfuric acid and smog and all that. And as Hedra, grows in size and power, just wreaking havoc and just leaving this kind of trail of, skeletal destruction in its path, we're introduced to this guy, Dr. Yano, and he's this marine biologist, and his son Ken is this kind of typical monster loving kid, just like me and other Godzilla fans, when we were kids. Um, and Ken is obsessed with pollution and believes that a monster is responsible for this environmental damage that's going on, and it just kind of comes off as like a premonition that really proves this kind of terrifying. It's terrifyingly accurate. You know what I mean? Um, so Godzilla is, alerted to this new threat and emerges to confront Hedorah, and their battles in this are unlike anything we've seen before in the Godzilla franchise, and because Hedorah isn't just this kind of physical threat, it's this embodiment of toxic waste that can change forms, and it spits out sludge and just it flies all over the place. I mean, um, the fights here are pretty brutal for a Godzilla film, and it showcases Godzilla's like raw power against this kind of truly disgusting and adaptable foe. Um, but the film isn't just about the monster battles though. So it kind of delves deep into that environmental crisis of the 70s. So we see these scenes of like industrial pollution and these over flowing landfills and just um, this devastating impact, that's on marine life. And the director, Bano, he doesn't shy away from the showing that grim reality, kind of, you know, putting it out there with these psychedelic visuals and just these kind of musical numbers in the film as well. That while they're kind of bizarre, they actually kind of amplify the film's more surreal and that unsettling tone that it has. Um, and just the human element of this film, while it's sometimes kind of overshadowed by the monster action, I think it really adds to the film's heart. Because Dr. Yano's like scientific and investigation and Ken's childlike wonder and all that and fear and just the reactions of just these everyday people that to this kind of escalating crisis that's going on. It makes it kind of this relatable reality in a way. Um, so the ending here is nothing short of spectacular, and it's I think it's bizarrely kind of genius. Um, so the the humans under Dr. Yano's guidance, they build these giant electrodes and to try and dehydrate Hedorah. And Godzilla initially struggles against Hydra's toxic abilities, and eventually utilizes these electrodes in this kind of very inventive and satisfying showdown between the two monsters. Um, so Godzilla, he literally rips Hedorah apart, incinerating the remains and just finally vanquishing this pollution fueled villain. And the film ends with this kind of powerful, it's somewhat kind of bleak message that pollution is real and it is this devastating monster, and even Godzilla might not always be around to save us. So a bit, like I said, it's a little bleak at the end, but I mean it's such a powerful message, especially for everything that was kind of going on at that time in the 70s. So like I said, this movie is very different from the rest of the Godzilla films. Very unique in its own way, and I feel like it's like a landmark film with a very lasting legacy in the Godzilla franchise. Because long before that all that environmentalism was mainstream, uh, Hedra really delivered this kind of powerful and visually like message about these dangers of pollution, and it used that whole kaiju genre to just address these kind of real world concerns and making it very surprisingly relevant even today, I think. um, and just the Bano's direction in this, he had a very unique visual style, because the film's like psychedelic aesthetic is really unforgettable to me, and it just I think it's influenced other filmmakers and artists for decades now. It's just this is a film that really visually sticks with you for a long time. Um, but in the franchise that's known for these giant monsters and stuff, Hedra, I think the film it dared to be different. It was very experimental and bizarre, and it really embraced that weirdness. Uh, I think this kind of willingness to deviate from the regular formula is what makes it stand out for sure. And I think it resonates with me personally. I think other fans as well, who kind of appreciate that the franchise is really diverse and just that imaginative nature that it brings. Um, and over time, Godzilla versus Hedra has, I think grown into a cult classic, at least for me, for sure. I mean, just that strangeness about it. It's and that message that it delivers. Um, it had the sheer audacity have to put that kind of message out there, and I think it's really earned its place in the Godzilla franchise as this really unique film. Um, so overall, in conclusion, Godzilla versus Hedorah is a very crazy, weird, strange. There's a lot of words you could use for this. It's very eco-conscious, unforgettable, but overall, it's. I think it's fucking awesome. Um, because it's challenging, it's disturbing, it's hilarious in its moments as well, just because of the absurdity of everything that happens, and I just think it really makes it a really important film in the Godzilla franchise. Um, so if you're a Godzilla fan, you're looking for something beyond that typical monster brawl, something that'll even make you think a little bit, maybe make you a little uncomfortable, then this is the one for you to dive headfirst into. And I don't think you'll regret it. I think I absolutely love this one, but I just I don't regret ever watching this because I think this is an absolutely great Godzilla movie. I mean, because again, just it's very experimental, and I don't know. It's just go watch it now. Go make your own opinion on it. It might end up being some of your all's new favorite Godzilla film, or at least one of the most talked about Godzilla films. But yeah, definitely recommend this one. Love it. Um, so moving on now, I guess I'm gonna go into the next film in the franchise, which is from 1972, and this is Godzilla versus Gigan. Um, so for some Godzilla fans, this one is kind of overlooked, but I think it absolutely deserves a lot of love with this one, because, well, for one thing, this is the first time we ever see Godzilla bleed in the franchise. So Gigan was the first monster to have made Godzilla bleed. So this is a time, period in the franchise, and just sci-fi and horror and all that, of those types of genres in general, where the gore in these films was starting to kind of amp up a little bit. And so for this to be so far into the Godzilla franchise, um, it was just so different to see Godzilla finally bleed in one of these battles. But we'll get to that in just a little bit. But as far as this movie goes, if you're looking for high art cinema or something, then you may want to look elsewhere uh, than this film. But if you are like me and you crave that kind of pure, unadulterated, monster mashing mayhem with, like, all this Showa era charm that we've come to love, then this flick may be for you. Because I think it's a total blast. I love this one. Um, but I know I say that about all of it, but that's me, man. I love the Godzilla franchise. I love all these movies in their own way. Um, so what exactly is Godzilla versus Gigan? So I guess it's just this glorious entry, man, from the Showa era, which is that golden age of just Japanese monster movies that are known for all their vibrant colors and just these imaginative monster designs, and just this pure fun, man. Um, so this is the 13th film in the original. I think this is the 13th. Let me think about that. I think no, this may be the 12th. I may be getting a little off track. That's all. I believe this might be the 12th film in the original Godzilla series, which was released by Toho, and yeah, I think it proudly wears its heart on its sleeve with this one, so to speak. But just kind of think of this as a monster tag team wrestling match. Uh, if I want to use that kind of comparison. Um, and I think it's a monster tag team match in the best possible way. And again, we'll get to that in just a little bit. But who is the director? So we got Jun Fukuda back again, and Jun Fukuda had already done a few different Godzilla films in the franchise, and here he has returned once again. Um, and he really understood the assignment with this film because um, he delivers all of these really exciting like monster action sequences and just has these really engaging characters, and he just kind of keeps that pace going. Like it's very very quick here, and I think with the whole Gigan character, he truly nailed it with that monster. Um, so this movie can be a little bit wild and crazy, but I think that's exactly what we want in a Godzilla movie. So the story kicks off with this kind of the struggling manga artist of all characters. So I thought that was really cool that they're starting to involve like the whole manga culture into the Godzilla films at this point. So this manga artist who's named Goro Ibuki, he's hired to design this monster themed like World Children's Land amusement park by this mysterious just this mysterious corporation. And hold on one second, I think my thing is freezing up. I apologize, guys. Crap, what's going on? Sorry, guys. If you could, I don't know if you can still see me, but my screen is like freezing up for some reason. What the hell? I'm so sorry, guys. Oh, okay. There we go. All right. So, where was I? Okay. So this, like I said, there's this manga artist named Goro Ibuki, and he was designed, or he was hired to design this kind of monster themed amusement park called World Children's Land by this kind of mysterious corporation that seems like a little too enthusiastic about all this like global peace. So, meanwhile, Goro and his friends Tomoko and Machiko, I think is how they say her name. Um, so they kind of stumble upon this secret like recording that's emanating from this Godzilla statue, and this recording is actually this alien like dialogue that reveals this kind of sinister plan that these aliens are putting together. So here's where that craziness really kind of ramps up in the film. So it turns out that the park is being built and run by these intergalactic cockroaches. Yeah, intergalactic. I shit you not. And they're from this like planet, I guess, called Space Hunter Nebula M. So, and these aren't your like average like cockroaches. These are these intelligent like these shape shifting aliens who are planning to conquer Earth, and they've taken these human forms, and they're using this world's children's land as this base to kind of beam these commands to their monster weapons, which is King Ghidorah, um, and Gigan, who is a new monster to the franchise at this point. So on so we go to Monster Island, which yes, it's still around, and Godzilla and Anguirus are alerted to this alien invasion. And what's so awesome about this is when they show Godzilla and Anguirus in the scene, they're like fucking talking to each other, and Godzilla's like or something like that, and and I think it has like subtitles if I remember correctly. Like he's like yelling for Anguirus, and then you and then you hear Anguirus, and like he speaks back, but it's actually you understandable. Like you hear like English, and it's such a weird voice that he that he puts out when he talks about, because like Godzilla's yelling for him or whatever, and Anguirus goes, "What is it?" or something like that. I mean, it's completely. If you're had never seen this film before and you were familiar with all the other Godzilla films that came before it, that is a totally unexpected scene, and to hear them talking to one another, it's so hilarious. Um, but like I said, Anguirus, who bravely kind of tries to warn humanity, but ends up with his jaw painfully broken by Gigan, and this ends up prompting Godzilla to kind of come into action and head to that mainland, Japan, to just kind of investigate what's going on. Um, so the stage is then set for this kind of epic showdown at this World Children's Land, and the three friends, Goro, Tomoko, and Machiko, they kind of figured out these aliens' plan at this point. So they end up joining forces with this army to sabotage like the aliens' base, and just disrupt this kind of these communication signals that they're putting out. Um, and the whole final act in this film is just this amazing like monster melee. And so Godzilla and Anguirus, they team up to face this duo of King Ghidorah and Gigan, and just the fight here it's brutal and very inventive, and we just kind of get these classic monster wrestling moves with like it looks like they're like doing suplexes and all kinds of shit, man. It's killer. um and we get like the laser beams, and Gigan has this like buzzsaw chest. It shreds Anguirus, and then like I said, the whole it's I think this is infamous of the in the film where Godzilla and Anguirus are talking to each other, and it's just it's so cheesy and just super entertaining. Um, but eventually, this through all this teamwork and Godzilla and Anguirus, they managed to end up defeating King Ghidorah and Gigan. And Godzilla got busted open in the process. He start. Gigan has that honor to be the first monster to make Godzilla bleed. Um, but this also sends these alien cockroaches kind of fleeing back to space as well, and Earth is saved once again, and thanks to that these combined efforts of the humans and the giant monsters, and Goro and Tomoko and Machiko, they all get to return to their normal lives now. So presumably with some wild stories to tell. Um, and this movie, like I said, it might not be considered a cinematic masterpiece by everyone, but I think for Godzilla fans, it really holds a special place. And because the film introduced one of Godzilla's, I think, most iconic and visually striking enemies, and that's Gigan. Because and he is just this truly like menacing creation with this cyborg design and these hook hands, and just that horrifyingly like that buzzsaw on his chest, and he's kind of just become this fan favorite for a lot of people, for a lot of Godzilla fans, and he's become a recurring villain in the franchise for good reason, I think. But definitely got to talk a little bit more about the whole team up action here. So that kind of dynamic between Godzilla and Anguirus, I think, is fantastic. they kind of work as this real monster tag team, and like strategizing with one another and kind of supporting each other in this battle. And it's always good to see Godzilla to have this kind of loyal ally in these movies. Um, and just this film, with all of that, kind of just embodies that whole pure fun aspect of the Showa era, because there's a lot of colorful shit here. It's very energetic. Just it doesn't take itself too seriously. Just the lower budget effects that they have here, and kind of more of a simple plot, is I think that's just a whole part of that endearing charm of the Showa era. Um, and it's just, I don't know, it's just so wonderfully like quirky and just super memorable as part of the franchise. Um, but Godzilla versus Gigan, it's known also for its kind of fast pace and a lot of this, monster action that's going on, from just Anguirus's initial encounter with Gigan to that, that tag team battle. There's just always something, exciting happening here in this film. Um, and I think over time, this movie has really gained a large cult following, because the fans appreciate it, for its unique villains and just that kind of over the top moments and just that sheer entertainment value. I think it's a film that really often rediscovered and appreciated for its kind of um, for its like unapologetic, I guess, monster movie goodness, if you will. So if you're a Godzilla fan who hasn't given Godzilla versus Gigan, a chance, again, I think you're missing out here. Um, it it was very innovative in a lot of ways with the franchise, and just that whole razor sharp slice of kaiju fun, packed with these iconic monsters and these thrilling battles, and just that perfect blend of that cheesy charm and all that exciting action is just so fun. And just it really just defines one of the best of the Showa era. So yeah, guys, definitely check out Godzilla versus Gigan. I don't think you'll regret it. Um, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. So moving on now, we come to Godzilla versus Megalon from 1973. So, all right, so let's talk about this. So um, this one is often discussed with as it kind of is associated with a very popular meme in the Godzilla franchise, in the Godzilla fandom, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But you know what? As a lifelong fan of Godzilla, I'm here to tell you that I adore this movie. I really do. Um, it's not one of my favorite Godzilla films, um, but I really do like this movie a lot, and I just think it's a lot of fun. And anyone who truly loves the Godzilla franchise, they definitely at least watch this one a few times, and it's always brings a really big goofy grin on my face when I watch this one. Um, so for those who aren't as informed with this film, um, well, it's it's often kind of positioned as one of the more lower budget entries in the franchise. And this one was again directed by Jun Fukuda, who filmed like Godzilla vs. Gigan and Invasion of Astro Monster and some other ones as well. And this one just sits kind of squarely in the early '70s. A period that's known for its more like whimsical and kind of often bizarre takes on the monster genre. Um, but don't let that lower budget, or that kind of whimsical aspect scare you off from this film. Um, I think that this film is a lot of fun. It has that Showa charm that we all know and love, and just it's got some really like crazy uh, action between the monsters here that really it's definitely rewatchable for me. I will say that just because of the whole fun that it brings. Now the film kicks off here with this like earthquake that's near this lake in Japan, and it turns out that this wasn't just any kind of like earthquake, but this wrath of Cetopia, which is this kind of ancient kingdom beneath the sea. And these guys are like seriously ticked off at the surface world for these kind of nuclear tests, which sounds kind of familiar, right, guys? With if you're a Godzilla fan, and they're just kind of unleashing their ultimate weapon here, which is this drill horn beetle-like monster, Megalon. Um, so meanwhile, our human heroes here are Goro Ibuki, who's this really brilliant inventor, and he has this younger brother named Rakuro. So Goro has built this kind of fantastic robot named Jet Jaguar, and anybody that's a Godzilla fan, you're gonna know where I'm going with this. You know that you got to be familiar with Jet Jaguar at this point. Um, so originally designed for this kind of simple task like rescuing people, Jet Jaguar is quickly caught up in this kind of Cetopian scheme. So they end up stealing Jet Jaguar, the people of Cetopia, and hoping to kind of use him as this weapon too, because why not, but Goro here has installed this kind of self control system within Jet Jaguar. Um, and here's where things get kind of delightfully weird. So Jet Jaguar, through some kind of unexplained but wonderfully convenient force of will, um, he breaks free from the Cetopian control, and just in this moment that is kind of pure, unadulterated, awesome, just grows to this kind of colossal size. And seriously, Jet Jaguar just decides he needs to be giant, and poof, he's giant. So he sets off to fight Megalon, this other giant monster, which but quickly realizes that he needs backup. So Jet Jaguar does the most logical giant robot thing ever. He flies to Monster Island to ask Godzilla for his help. And yes, that you heard me right. He literally flies across the ocean, points at himself, points in the direction back to Japan, and motions Godzilla to follow him. And Godzilla just being like, fuck it, why not? It just surprisingly just helps. He agrees to it, and he follows him. But wait, there's more to this. So Cetopia, realizing Megalon might need a hand, calls in their other monster pal, and that's that space cyborg chicken dragon monster, which is Gigan. And yes, so Gigan is back here in this film, and this time, he's teaming up with Megalon just to take on Godzilla and Jet Jaguar. So the final act in this film is just a lot of pure monster brawl fun. Again, we get this kind of tag team sequence between Godzilla and Jet Jaguar against Megalon and Gigan, and the action here is very goofy and just but charming, at that same time. And Jet Jaguar does his iconic Jet Jaguar punch and these dance moves, and Godzilla slides on his tail. So that's the meme I was talking about, guys. That's a very popular meme in the Godzilla fandom. Is the scene in this movie when Godzilla slides on his tail, and then so you have Gigan who's kind of flapping his wings up and down, and just the fight here is just so chaotic and so hilarious, and it ends up culminating in Godzilla and Jet Jaguar, triumphing over this kind of Cetopian menace and sending Megalon and Gigan packing back to space or wherever they came from. So let's go ahead and talk about the impact that this movie has made. Um, so, well, first of all, I mean, as a film in the Godzilla franchise, um, it's very different, and it's not. I mean, it's not really even a Godzilla film. I mean, it is, but also it's really more of a Jet Jaguar film than it is a Godzilla film. Um, which is so weird because this was a brand new character that they created for the franchise, and I don't know if they was expecting it to just kind of like take over in popularity over Godzilla, because Godzilla, let's be honest, his screen time in this one is very limited. Um, so yeah, I mean, this film, while it's not always kind of critically like acclaimed in the traditional sense, um, I still think it's really carved out a very truly special place in the hearts of Godzilla fans, including myself. It's kind of often considered peak so bad it's good, but I genuinely believe it transcends that label. I mean, I think this one is just very pure, unadulterated fun. I mean, I think it's great. I think it's just so fun. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a great movie or anything, um, but I do have a lot of fun with this one. And like I said, the movie introduced Jet Jaguar, and it's crazy. Like in the Godzilla fandom, Jet Jaguar has become this kind of like an icon because he has this like simplistic, like almost Ultraman esque design, and it just I don't know, like he is this kind of very undeniably charming in this film, and he's this like unique and just beloved addition that was brought to the whole Toho monster, legacy, I guess, if you will. Just and he kind of often pops up in a lot of merchandise and fan art and stuff. So, um, but that character, he does represent a real departure as well in the whole kaiju design and the personality, and but I think he's a huge part of why this movie is so memorable to a lot of Godzilla fans. Um, but the movie, embraces its kind of lower budget, um, because the effects here are, well, they're definitely not up to par with the previous entries in the franchise. But I think this also adds to the film's charm. Um, it's a movie that doesn't take itself too seriously, and I think that's a lot of a part of its appeal. Um, and it's just like I said, it's just a lot of fun, and it's really refreshing. At times, with this, just because of how low budget it is, and just how cheesy it is. Um, but I think the movie does perfectly encapsulate that whole spirit of the Showa era of the Godzilla films. Because just that this it's very colorful, very imaginative, and it just has all this really fun monster action, and you throw in this almost like a robot superhero into the mix, and it just I think it makes it even more entertaining for me at least. Um, and it's not really it's not this like deep or thought provoking film or anything, but I think it always puts a smile on my face for sure. I mean, I have a lot of fun with it, and um, if you want to talk about some of the plot points in this film, I mean they're pretty ridiculous. I mean, like Cetopia, this giant beetle monster, this robot that befriends Godzilla. Um, I mean, it's all like very silly, but I think that's precisely why fans love it. Um, it's a movie that you can kind of sit back and relax and just have a blast with it without really having to overthink anything. Um, but in conclusion, I guess this Godzilla versus Megalon um, is a must see for any Godzilla fan. It's not a masterpiece or anything, guys, but I think it is a masterpiece of that pure monster movie entertainment. Because it's got crazy monsters, goofy action, a heroic robot, and Godzilla, being Godzilla. um, and so I just fully advise you, just when you watch this, to just embrace that silliness. Appreciate that whole Showa era charm, and you'll find yourself want to watch this time and time again. Um, so yeah, just that's what it it all is. That's what it's all about, guys. It's just to have a good time with these films. I don't think you'll regret it. So long live Godzilla and Jet Jaguar. So for sure, man, like definitely check this one out. Okay, so that brings me now to the last. I'm down to the last two films in the Showa era, and before I get to that very last film in the Showa era that concluded this masterpiece of this period of the franchise. You know what I mean? Like, let's go ahead and talk about Godzilla versus MechaGodzilla from 1974. So I think this film is a truly iconic entry in the Godzilla franchise, um, because it has this very action-packed spectacle that really cements, like that legend of one of Godzilla's greatest, you know, enemies in the franchise, and it really delivers this truly wild ride. Um, and if you haven't seen it, you need to drop what you're doing. Stop watching this video right now and go watch Godzilla versus MechaGodzilla, and just you need to rectify that immediately. Um, but if you have seen it, well, let's relive this awesomeness together. So, what is Godzilla versus MechaGodzilla? Well, it is the 14th film in the original Showa era Godzilla series, and it's a pivotal one as well. I mean, this is the film that gifted us MechaGodzilla, which is the robotic doppelganger of Godzilla, and he's just a villain that is so brilliantly conceived, and just he's executed, you know, to become this kind of cornerstone of the entire franchise. And it's a really classic monster showdown in the franchise, and it has these kind of layers of like mystery and intrigue that kind of elevate it to beyond just this kind of simple brawl. Um, so again, we have Jun Fukuda behind the camera as the director again for this, and at this point, he was a veteran of the Showa era. Having him several previous Godzilla films, like Son of Godzilla, Godzilla versus Gigan, Godzilla versus Megalon, and he brings that signature blend of this kind of fast paced action, you know. And these like practical effects and just that right touch of campiness that really makes these classic Godzilla movies so endlessly entertaining. Um, and Fukuda gets what makes a Godzilla movie work, I think. And Godzilla versus MechaGodzilla, I think, is a testament to his kind of skill to and just delivering all that that fun that these monster movies bring. Um, so the film kicks off with this kind of series of these like unsettling type omens. So these Okinawan Islanders are kind of spooked by this prophecy that foretells the appearance of these monsters that will bring destruction, in their community. And these kind of strange magnetic disturbances are also kind of plaguing the region as well. And then, bam, Godzilla appears, but something is off about him. So the Godzilla we've come to know and love since around the fifth film, Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, Godzilla has turned face. And he went from being this huge villain, this heel of a monster, to being like the protector of Earth, and that's what we've known him to be for a while now. While talking about these films, but like I said, something is off about this Godzilla when he first appears in this film, because this Godzilla is more aggressive and destructive than usual. Kind of like his old self when we first met him in these films, and so because he's laying waste to all these cities, and he even gets into this battle with Anguirus, and he injures Anguirus in the kind of this, which is I think a shocking scene at this point for any kind of dedicated fan of the franchise, where because we've come to know Godzilla's kind of being this friend to Anguirus and being the protector of Earth and not want to destroy these cities and these buildings and all that. So yeah, it definitely comes as a shock, and you're like, did Godzilla just turn heel on us? Um, but as this kind of world like reels from this seemingly evil Godzilla, another Godzilla emerges. But this time, this second Godzilla is the real deal, and he so then that's when we notice when they get into this battle, when the Godzilla and the other Godzilla get in the battle, the one kind of has this scar on his chest from where they battled with Anguirus, and it's kind of like this like glimmering, like very shiny scar, like almost like metal. So these two Godzillas are now clashing in this kind of spectacular battle, and just during the fight, these pieces of this evil Godzilla's skin starts to get torn off, and reveals that he's not Godzilla at all. He's MechaGodzilla. So the true Godzilla ends up getting wounded, but determined to defeat this imposter. So meanwhile, we're introduced to this kind of group of researchers in Okinawa, including this marine biologist, Professor, what is his name? Miyajima, I think is his last name. So, and he has this assistant named Seiko, and there's also this archaeologist named Shimizu, and they're all investigating this kind of ancient Okinawan legend, and they discovered this statue of this mythical like guardian monster named King Caesar, and they realize that King Caesar is the or Caesar, however you like to pronounce it. They say it both ways, which is a confusing thing about it in the film. They say Caesar and Caesar. So, and it's all up to you how you will pronounce it. But I'm gonna call him King Caesar. So, uh, like I said, they realize that King Caesar is the key to defeating the Mecha Godzilla, and we learned that Mecha Godzilla is not just some random robot. It's this alien weapon. So, and the aliens in this are known as the simians, and they're like ape-like aliens from this third planet of the black hole. Yeah, really, that's how they describe it. And this movie is like Godzilla meets a, a giant robot versus Planet of the Apes, and because like I said, these aliens, the simians, they're like ape-like aliens, and it's also kind of funny because this movie came out in 1974, and we have King Caesar or King Caesar, which Caesar was a character in Planet of the Apes. Specifically Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. It came out in 1972, which came out 2 years prior to this movie. So I don't know if there was any kind of direct influence from the Planet of the Apes films going into this Godzilla film, but it certainly feels that way. But anyway, these aliens, the simians, they've arrived on Earth, with Mechagodzilla as their kind of ultimate weapon to conquer the planet. and they've been orchestrating these kind of magnetic disturbances and using MechaGodzilla disguised as Godzilla to kind of start all this chaos and just kind of weaken the defenses of Earth. And their base is hidden within this cave system in Okinawa, which is powered by this kind of strange crystal that they call the space titanium. So the simians, they're all very evil and cunning or whatever, and just they kind of add this really great sci-fi villain element to this kaiju action that's going on, and they they remotely control MechaGodzilla by making him incredibly powerful and versatile with this kind of arsenal of lasers and missiles and a rotating head that's just pure villainous design genius. I think so. Professor Miyajima and his kind of and his team they race against time to awaken this King Caesar, and they discover that singing a specific Okinawan folk song is the key to awakening him. So, with the help of some of these kind of local villagers, they perform this ritual, and King Caesar, who's this giant, like almost like I don't know, like a dog like slash gorilla creature, uh, he, so he rises from his slumber, and and now we kind of have this three-way monster melee. Godzilla, who's wounded but still willing to fight, um, teams up. Well, it's sort of it's more of kind of a begrudging alliance between Godzilla and King Caesar, but they come to take on MechaGodzilla, and the final battle here is this kind of absolute monster movie masterpiece because MechaGodzilla unleashes like everything that he's got, his full arsenal. King Caesar proves to be very agile and powerful, and just very probably one of my favorite monsters in the whole Godzilla franchise. And then of course Godzilla, the man, my favorite overall. Well, again, he's Godzilla, man. I mean, there's no much more you can say. Godzilla is Godzilla here, and he and it's funny because like he absorbs like lightning to kind of power himself up, and use that atomic breath, which is kind of this very devastating effect. Um, but the ending here is awesome because King Caesar he uses these kind of reflective powers to bounce back Mechagodzilla's eye beams, and Godzilla kind of this moment of very sheer glorious power charges up his atomic breath and rips off Mechagodzilla's head. And it's so awesome. It's very iconic to me and just very satisfying. Um, and the whole simian base is destroyed, and Earth is saved once again, thanks to Godzilla and King Caesar, and really also a really good dose of Okinawan folklore. So let's talk about this. So this film is huge, man. So without a doubt, its biggest legacy, I think, is the introduction of Mechagodzilla, because he is arguably Godzilla's one of Godzilla's most popular rivals. Because he's appeared in multiple films across different eras, always kind of posing this very credible and visually striking threat. Mechagodzilla is the just the concept of him is where he's like this ultimate weaponized version of Godzilla himself. It just really kind of taps into these fears of technology and imitation. So yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's AI. It's just kind of it was the pioneer for all this AI bullshit. Um, but the film, I think, successfully blends, classic sci-fi, alien invasion, with this kind of Okinawan mythology and culture. It's very cool, man. Like King Caesar, who's kind of inspired by these guardian statues, kind of adds a very unique flavor to the whole monster roster of this franchise, and just it also just kind of connects the film to this very specific cultural identity almost. Um, just the blend with all that is something I think sets it apart from a lot of other Showa era Godzilla films. Um, and also, this movie I think is noticeably more action packed and intense than some of its predecessors. Um, just the monster fights here are very brutal and dynamic, and the stakes also kind of feel higher a little bit, and just this whole alien race of these simians kind of adds a genuine sense of threat. So this film pushed a lot of boundaries, I think, and just in what a Godzilla movie could be in terms of action and pacing and all that. Um, so the monster designs here in this film, so both Mechagodzilla and King Caesar are fantastic creature designs. Um, and Mechagodzilla is definitely one of my favorite designs in the entire franchise. Um, because he has like this very sharp and like angular robotic look, and I think that contrasts perfectly with with Godzilla's organic form. And then you got King Caesar, who has this kind of like dog slash gorilla aesthetic, and it's very unique, I think, and very memorable. And these designs kind of have, I think they've stood the test of time, and definitely continue to influence all these kind of modern kaiju creations that we still get to this day. Um, but this movie definitely had a lasting influence on the franchise, and it's a fan favorite, for a reason. It's a perfect example of what makes classic Godzilla movies, I think, so enjoyable. Just with these imaginative monsters and just exciting battles, just a touch of this, that whole sci-fi silliness, and just ultimately just kind of this triumphant victory for Godzilla. Um, it definitely sets a high bar for that monster versus monster action, and it just solidified the character Mechagodzilla as this kind of permanent fixture in the Godzilla universe. Um, but overall, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, it's a great one, guys. It's thrilling, it's inventive, it's utterly entertaining. It's this monster spectacle that just introduced, I think, one of the best villains in kaiju history, and just delivered a story that's still captivating. Audiences, decades later. If and so if you crave that classic, Godzilla action, just and a memorable villain, and just a healthy dose of this monster movie madness, you absolutely need to experience this movie. And just, yeah, it's just a fantastic entry point, I think, for anyone curious about the Godzilla franchise. So now that brings me to the last film in the Showa era, and some people will argue that I will because technically the Hensai era didn't begin until 1989, and then the next film that would come out in the Godzilla franchise after this one, which is Return of Godzilla, came out, I believe, in 1984 or 85. I believe it was 84. So a lot of people consider that one the ending to the Showa era, but I've always looked at this one because there was such a huge gap for 1975 to 1984. There were no Godzilla films, so I personally see this last film that we're going to talk about tonight as the grand finale of the Showa era. And that's the follow up to the film we just talked about. That's Terror of MechaGodzilla from 1975. And again, I've stated this many times, but as a lifelong Godzilla fan, I can confidently say that Terror of Mechagodzilla is a great Godzilla film. Um, and it's also just this fantastic sci-fi monster movie in its own right. Um, and it's often overshadowed, by its predecessor, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, which a lot of Godzilla fans say that that film should have been the finale to the Showa era. But I'm kind of on the fence with that. As much as I love Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, Terror of Mechagodzilla really stands tall as this more darker and more mature and ultimately this rewarding entry in the Showa era. And what exactly is the movie though? So, like I said, it marks a significant return to form, which kind of ditches some of these sillier elements of the earlier films, and just delivers this story with a more surprising depth and just genuine tragedy, and just of course this incredible monster action. And it's the culmination of the Mechagodzilla storyline up to this point, at least. Um, and here's what makes this so awesome for me. So the director is none other than Ashiro Honda. And I've talked about him enough during Godzilla Fest for you to know who he is at this point. He is the legendary director who helmed the original Godzilla from 1954, and many other classic kaiju films. But what's most important about that is that I feel, and another reason why I feel like this is the grand finale to the Showa era, is because this would also be Ashiro Honda's last Godzilla film before his death in 1993. And it just comes full circle. He's the one that started it all. He was the one that directed the original film, so it's only fitting that he makes his way back full circle to direct the last film, in my mind, um, in this Showa era. So, and also his return to the director's chair for this movie is immediately apparent because he definitely brings this very nuanced approach to the material that really elevates it, and you can just kind of feel his understanding of the like the core themes of humanity and science, and just the consequences of tampering with nature, and just things that were so crucial to the original Godzilla film. So having Shiro Honda back at the helm really adds that kind of undeniable layer of authenticity and respectability to the film. Um, so the story here for Terror of Mechagodzilla is surprisingly complex and just compelling for a monster movie. So it's not just this like monster mayhem that we all love, but it's also this very interesting tale of human tragedy and manipulation. Um, it begins with this marine biologist. Well, actually, it kind of the movie starts off kind of with this narrator giving this backstory of Godzilla and kind of gives like a little history lesson leading up to this point in the movie. So it kind of goes back all the way to his unknown origins, and and talks about the events from the first few films leading into how he became this protector of Earth, and everything that brings us up to this point in the franchise. Um, so I thought that's another reason to look at this movie as kind of the last film in the Showa era, um, despite what some people think, is because they made a point to put that at the beginning of the film to kind of give you this history of Godzilla and how it brings us up to speed. So I think that's definitely fitting as well to throw that in there to just kind of give us a whole, story of this entire era that we've experienced. But apart from that, as after it gives it kind of like, a prologue to the movie, the story then begins with this marine biologist named Akira, who is searching this seabed for clues about the disappearance of a submarine that went missing in the past year. And during this dive down into the sea, he encounters this new monster, which is this dinosaur-like Titanosaurus, and he's attacked, but he manages to escape. So meanwhile, Interpol is investigating this reappearance of MechaGodzilla, fearing another attack. So they consult with Ishino's, I think is how you say his name, who kind of details his encounter with Titanosaurus, and well, that's his name, but his real name is I call him Akira because that's his first name, but they do call him by his last name a lot in the movie. But so we'll just call him Akira. But like I said, Akira, who kind of details his encounter with Titanosaurus, recognizes this creature's kind of unusual behavior. And just this kind of further investigation begins by the Interpol agent Jiro, who leads them to this reclusive and disgraced scientist, Dr. Shinji Mifune. And I got a picture of this guy, and I've always thought this ever since I was a kid. I don't, I never refer to him as his name actually in the movie. I always refer to him as Colonel Sanders. And I mean, there he is. That's Shinji Mifune from the mad scientist character from this movie. And I mean, tell me that is not Colonel Sanders. So anyway, sorry guys, but anyway, Dr. Mifune, or Colonel Sanders, as we learned, was once this kind of respected scientist who became ostracized from the scientific community after claiming to have successfully controlled all these aquatic animals with these sound waves. So he was ridiculed and discredited for all this, and it kind of it drove him into this isolation. Um, but however, Mifune was actually successful in doing this. He can control Titanosaurus using these ultrasonic waves, and he's now a pawn in this hands of these remnants of these black hole Planet 3 aliens, which was the simians from Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. And these aliens, which were led by their commander Megal, they're desperate to conquer Earth after their kind of previous attempt has failed. So they have come to rebuild Mechagodzilla, and they're using Dr. Mifune and Titanosaurus as their kind of instruments of destruction in the process. So they've also taken this more kind of sinister step because Mifune's own daughter, Katsura, was severely injured in this accident years ago. So, and the aliens end up saving her life by turning her into this cyborg. And I think, and it integrates this kind of alien technology into her body. And Katsura is now completely kind of like a servant to Magal's will, and acts as this kind of as and acts as the brain control Mechagodzilla. So her human emotions are suppressed, and these aliens launch their attack on Tokyo, and just it unleashed Mechagodzilla and Titanosaurus. And Godzilla, sensing this threat, arrives to defend Japan as he usually does. And very ensuing monster battle that's both epic and brutal occurs, and Titanosaurus, controlled by Mifune via Katsura, initially proves that he's a formidable opponent to Godzilla, and using its kind of powerful tail fan to create these hurricane forced winds and disrupt Godzilla's movements. Mechagodzilla, who is now upgraded, is even more powerful than before. So he's kind of sporting all this new weaponry and just these really improved defenses. So throughout all this, we see Katsura kind of struggling with her cybernetic nature. And while she's physically loyal to the aliens, um, there are several glimpses of like her humanity that begin to show through, and they, especially when she encounters Akira, so who becomes kind of romantically interested in her. So Akira kind of sees past her kind of cold exterior and starts to kind of awaken the human side of her. And the movie ends in this kind of desperate struggle as Godzilla battles both Mechagodzilla and Titanosaurus simultaneously. So the human the human element becomes kind of increasingly crucial as Interpol and Akira try to find this way to disrupt this alien control. So they discover that Katsura's cyborg nature and realize she is this key to defeating Mechagodzilla. Um, and just I guess in a very climatic scene, Katsura finally embraces her human emotions and Akira's love, I guess, and she chooses to sacrifice herself. So she ends up disabling Mechagodzilla's kind of control systems from within, and allowing Godzilla to finally gain that upper hand against him. So Godzilla unleashes this devastating atomic breath blast that destroys Mechagodzilla once and for all. And with Mechagodzilla defeated and their control over Titanosaurus, which is now broken due to Katsura's death, um, the alien invasion is stopped, and Titanosaurus now, without control, is driven away by Godzilla back into the ocean, seemingly left to live in peace. Um, so the film ends on a somber note, kind of highlighting that tragic sacrifice of Katsura and that destructive power of humanity's ambition and just that scientific pride. It's just themes that really resonate strongly, throughout the film. And it's because it's not just about these monsters fighting; it's about this kind of human cost of conflict and just the potential for redemption, even in that darkest of circumstances. And I think it's a really a beautiful message and a perfect finale for the Showa era because it brings us full circle to from the original Godzilla from 1954, and what a powerful message that movie brought us, and it just had more of a darker and serious tone. And we have that here in the last film of the Showa era as well, and it's brought to us by the same guy that directed the first film, Mashiro Honda. So um, yeah, such I think a perfect way to end this era of the Godzilla franchise. And Terror of Mechagodzilla is a film that I think has grown in appreciation over time, and I think it's now regarded as a high point in the Showa era. Um, because of that that darker tone and that maturity that it brought, it really stands out. Um, and it stands out for that kind of darker and more serious tone compared to the many other Showa era films, which sometimes leaned into that whole campiness and silliness. But again, that's not a bad thing because that was just a huge part of the appeal of the Godzilla movies, especially during this time period. Um, excuse me. So, but this movie, it does explore like themes of betrayal and sacrifice, and just that dangers of that unchecked scientific ambition with the very surprising depth to it. And I think this maturity really resonated with a lot of fans who wanted more than just monster brawls. But not saying that monster brawls are a bad thing. I mean, like that's one of the biggest reasons why I love these Godzilla movies. Um, but just going into that whole more depth of these like human characters and non-human characters, like the character of Katsura, is definitely a standout in this movie. Kind of her tragic backstory, just her kind of internal conflict, and just her eventual like act of that self-sacrifice, or I think is definitely moving, for a Godzilla film. Um, and just the relationship between Katsura and Akira, really adds a layer of like the romantic drama that's rarely seen with such effectiveness in this series. Um, and then Dr. Mifune or Colonel Sanders, um, I mean, it's kind of descent into madness and his exploitation by the aliens are just also very compelling. It adds a lot of weight to that narrative. Um, but I had to show that again. Sorry, guys. But Titanosaurus, the introduction of Titanosaurus here is very fantastic, and he's very unique. So his design is definitely memorable. His sound is very distinct, and just his powers, especially the wind generating tail that he has, I just think it really makes him a really cool addition to the whole monster catalog in the Godzilla franchise. Um, and it's just like I said, I've said this multiple times already, but it's just a very fitting Showa era finale because Terror of Mechagodzilla served as being very effective and just very you know it was it had a very resonant conclusion to the show era's like themes and style. Um, it brought back Ashiro Honda, just delivered a darker narrative to the story, and just gave Mechagodzilla a very spectacular and almost definitive send off. Well, at least for a while, I guess. Uh, and it just felt like a very conscious effort to end this era of the Godzilla franchise on a high note. And over the years, this movie has developed, I think, a very strong you know cult following amongst Godzilla fans, and it has the darker tone, um, and just that compelling human story. I can't say that enough. And it's excellent. It's the I mean the monster action here is excellent. And I just think it's really become this kind of beloved and respected entry in the franchise. But many fans, myself included, uh, you know, consider it as one of the best, and I definitely do. I mean, I think I put it like I said. I'm kind of on the fence when it comes to this one and its predecessor, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. I love them the same, so I can't. It's really tough for me to kind of find a distinct difference in those two that which one I like more because I love them equally for different reasons, if that makes sense. Um, but Terror of Mechagodzilla is a film I think that deserves to be celebrated, and it's a fantastic example of how a monster movie can be intelligent and emotionally resonant and just and thrilling all at once. And Ashiro Honda's direction is just masterful here. That the monster action is top notch. The human story is surprisingly affecting, and just that introduction of Titanosaurus is a welcome addition to the Godzilla universe. Um, so, if you're a Godzilla fan who appreciates depth and darkness and just fantastic monster action, Terror of Mechagodzilla is an absolute must see. Like I said, I feel that it's a high point in the Showa era, and and the grand finale, in my opinion, to the Showa era, and just it just shows that testament to that enduring power that this franchise has. But guys, I guess that's it for Godzilla Fest as far as the movies go. That is. But before I go tonight, so I'm going to follow up this tradition that I've been doing for the past two nights of Godzilla Fest, where I'm going to show you guys some of my collection, my Godzilla collection. And so I'm only going to show a few pieces again tonight, like I had the past couple of nights. Um, I don't want to show you guys like all of my Godzilla collection. I mean, I'm eventually going to, because I want to make that a separate video on the channel where I can just show you guys the entirety of the collection all together at once. But these are just kind of little, a taste of what I do have in my collection. And I saved all of these for this particular video because of the films that I was covering for tonight. And I actually got these first two things I want to show you guys. I just got these not that long ago off of eBay, and these were put out by the company Super 7. They're the reaction figures that Super 7 makes. And I don't know if these were like exclusive to something or I'm not sure, but I thought they were super cool. So here is the Godzilla. It's like the pinball version of Godzilla. So you can see like the card and everything is like the pinball machine. And so they've designed this figure to kind of look like the Godzilla in the pinball machine. And I think that's so awesome. And I'll read the back of this. This is in this monster packed pinball adventure. Players become Godzilla. The evil aliens use mind control rays to take control of the monsters King Ghidorah, Gigan, Megalon, Abira, and Titanosaurus. The aliens are demanding all of Earth's resources. Godzilla and its allies, Mothra, Rodan, and Anguirus, battle the alien invasion with the goal of conquering MechaGodzilla to become king of the monsters. So, like I said, after what I just read to you, so you see there's Godzilla, but also it came. I got this one as well, the MechaGodzilla from the pinball machine, the pinball game. So, and I love these figures. I think the cards on these are beautiful, both front and back. So, yeah, I mean, super cool. I love those. Like I said, I don't know if these were like exclusives to anything, but I saw them on eBay, and I think I paid like 40 or $50 for the pair or something like that. Which was fair to me, as a Godzilla fan. I was like, I said I absolutely love those. I gotta have those. So yeah, so that's those. I wanted to show those real quick. Sit them over here for a second. This next thing I want to show you guys, while it's not from one of the films that I talked about tonight, it is the follow up from 1993. And I wanted to mention that. So I mentioned about Ishiro Honda. This was the Terror of Mechagodzilla was his last Godzilla film, and he passed away in 1993 during the Heisei era. And I have something from that Heisei era, which came out the same year that he passed away, which happens to be Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2 from 1993. And I showed you guys the lunch boxes that I had last night from the Godzilla from 1954 and the Destroy All Monsters, but this is Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2 from 1993. And of course, it just like the others, it has the photos on the sides as well. One has the Mechagodzilla, and the other has Rodan. And then just on the top there is a image of Godzilla doing his atomic blast, going back and forth with Mechagodzilla in that battle from the movie. And this one also does come with a thermos as well, just like the two that I showed last night. And we go ahead and take these. So there's the poster of Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. And it also, just like the others, has kind of an X-ray diagram, but this time of Mechagodzilla. So yeah, I think that one's super cool. And even though it's not part of the Showa era, I definitely wanted to show it to you guys. Let me get this thing back in here. Sorry. All right. So let me put that away and go on to the next thing I want to show you guys. So, these, see this little guy right here? Isn't he cool looking? So these are banks, and I got this guy at Hobby Lobby, of all places. So, and this is actually one of my favorite um, Godzilla pieces that I have. I absolutely love it, and well, along with this other one I'm about to show. So there's that guy right there. I'll sit him right there, so he's kind of like looking at you guys in the corner. Uh, and here's the other guy that go with him, the MechaGodzilla, and I got this guy at this place that my wife introduced me to in Cincinnati, Ohio, called Jungle Gyms. And Jungle Gyms, I think I've talked about it once before here on the show. Um, but it's like this huge like grocery store that kind of hosts all these different foods from across the world. And they also have this huge collectible section in the store as well. And all of their different aisles that they have in the collectible section are all themed. So in one aisle, they have like one section of stuff, Godzilla stuff. And I was like, oh shit, I seen this one, and I was like, I already got, the Godzilla one at home. I said I gotta have the Mecha Godzilla to go with them, so they can kind of sit on my shelf and you know act like they're battling each other. So yeah, I love these pieces. Right, these are two of my favorite pieces in my whole Godzilla collection. Um, but this next item I wanted to show you guys, I got this not too long ago. I think this was like the last Godzilla item that I got for my collection. So this one was a little bit pricey because this is the lounge fly backpack. And if anybody knows anything about lounge fly backpacks, they can be pretty expensive. And I paid $100 for this one. I know that's a lot of money for a backpack, but this is really fucking cool, guys. So check out this backpack. And you see you got Godzilla in the foreground with the burning city below him, and then back here you got King Ghidorah, and then over here you got Rodan and Mothra, and his arms move, so you can like pose his arms around any way you want, and it's super cool. Like it's got like the Japanese writing on the side there, same with the other side. And then the back, it's got like this kind of mesh material with the Godzilla like logo and the footprint. And if I could, I might be able to show you guys the inside of this. So the inside print um, is kind of like it's got really, it looks really cool as well. Just the different little pictures of Godzilla and this Japanese writing and everything. Um, But yeah, like I said, it's super high quality. It's almost like a leather material all around on the backpack, and I just think it's really cool. $100 is a lot of money for it, but I think it's fucking cool as hell. And Brandon, you are correct, sir. If I would have had this thing when we were kids at Duff Elementary, I would have been the coolest kid at school with it, but and I mean they made in the '90s they made some really cool backpacks. I think a lot of us that went to school together, we had some really cool stuff, really cool backpacks, but nothing like that. This is like, and that's because I paid so much for it. I'm never going to use that. That's just going to be somewhere here in the corner of my room with my rest of my Godzilla collection. Um, Yes, because I don't want any kind of wear and tear done to that because it's really cool. And also, I guess I forgot to mention like the eyes. So the eyes here, they kind of like have this very like glossy feel to the eyes as well. So yeah, they put a lot of detail into this backpack for sure. And I just it's one of my another one of my favorite pieces from my Godzilla collection. But like I say that with like each new edition that I get, like the next thing I get will be one of my favorite pieces as well. But like that's just how much I love Godzilla, and just I love collecting this stuff. And these last couple things, um, these are also another one of my favorite pieces in my collection, guys. But I wanted to save these for last because there is kind of a story with these as well. So these came. This is a set. Well, let me see. I'll show that guy last. But this is a set by a company called Trim Masters, and these came out in 1994. And they made all kinds of different uh, figures and toys from this line. These in particular are the bendy figures, the bendable figures, and but they made like a big, like you show on the back here, because like this down here are like the regular action figures, and they had like a bank, and they had like these like little like play sets, like, and just these different little mini figures that came in these eggs, and they had like the some human characters as well, like the Godzilla Task Force. I mean, just a ton of different stuff. They even had like these little Godzilla, like I said, these little mini places, kind of like Polly Pocket or Max Mini, if you guys remember that stuff. They made like these Godzilla little places, like where you could like open up the head and it had like little mini figures inside. But I have these figures, so these are the bendable figures though, and there's Godzilla, and you see behind him, they all come with this trading card of the character, and so that's the Godzilla one. And let's see, the next one I'll show is the Mothra one, and everybody loves Mothra, and just look, all the beautiful colors that she has, on her wings and stuff there, and she also comes with a card as well. Um, and then we have King Ghidorah, which is one of my favorite monsters. Well, probably my favorite monster design out of all the monsters in the Godzilla franchise. And yeah, so he's super cool looking. And well, I also have MechaGodzilla, so that's why this is one of the reasons why I saved to show these here on part 3 of Godzilla Fest, because MechaGodzilla is. Well, I talked about 2 of the MechaGodzilla films, and so I wanted to save this figure to show you guys. And then also I have Rodan, but he's not in the package. But I think I actually got him from like an estate sale or something. But I'm hoping I'll find another one in the package to go with this set. But here's the story with these guys. So on the card, you see it says collect all 5. And, including the Rodan out of the package, I have showed you 5 figures, right? So you would think that I have the whole set. But here's the thing that kind of like turns me for a loop on this set is on the back, even on the front it says collect all 5, right? So, but on the back, we have Rodan, we have Mothra, we have Ghidorah, we have Mecha Ghidorah, and MechaGodzilla. So that's 5. But if you include Godzilla, that's 6. So here's the thing. Like the only one I don't have out of all those characters is Mecha Ghidorah. And I have looked online for the bendable of Mecha Ghidorah, and I've only been able to find one on eBay. And it had like a Spanish card to it. So I don't know if something happened there where they couldn't release that particular figure in the US, and it maybe just got like a Spanish exclusive release. But it is definitely confusing to me as to why they would put collect all 5 when clearly there are 6 characters to collect in this series. So I don't know. If anybody out there is watching this and they have more of a backstory on what it is, what's the deal with these bendable figures, let me know. Send me a message or a comment or something. I would love to, because if it exists out there, on just the regular U.S. cards like this. I'm not. So I can find the Spanish card, fine, guys. It's out there. I've seen it, but I would love to know if there is a U.S. release of the Mecha Ghidorah, so I can add that to my collection. Um, and there's a lot of exciting stuff. There's always all kinds of Godzilla stuff that's coming out as far as merchandising goes. I actually have this one pre-ordered. So this is the NECA Ben Cooper like kids Halloween costumes figures, and let me see if I can grab one of these. So like I have a bunch of these already. Let me go back to like a lot of the monster ones. Like this is the Phantom of the Opera, and they have like so they make other ones like the skeleton and the creature and Dracula, Frankenstein. There's a ton of these. They've got like a Gizmo and Stripe from Gremlins. One like these, and they have like a Beetlejuice and Aliens. There's all kinds coming out, guys. Um, and if you notice my little profile picture here on my channel, that's a picture of me when I was 3 years old, on Halloween in 1989, where I'm wearing a costume much like these, but it's a Freddy Krueger one. So I'm really hoping that they, because NECA does have the licensing to Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy Krueger, so I'm hoping they'll eventually put a Freddy Krueger one out of these, so I can say like, hey, I have an action figure of myself. Uh, but yeah, like I said, I have this one right here, pre-ordered. It's supposed to come out later this year. And also in the series is like a Tar Man from Return of the Living Dead. There's a Jaws one, The Fly, and Planet of the Apes. So I have that whole set pre-ordered, and can't wait to get this one, particularly to add to my Godzilla collection. So yeah, like I said, just a ton of stuff coming out, guys. And and man, you are right. The Ben Cooper figures look so good. I actually love. They're probably my favorite like series of figures that's out right now by NECA. Um, I mean, I've been trying to get every single one that I can. There's that whole first series I don't have in the blue boxes. I don't have any of those. They're kind of expensive online, but you never know. I may run by them at a convention or something sometime and find a good price on them. And yeah, NECA definitely did knock them out of the park. And it's just very nostalgic for me because I grew up with those types of costumes, and I was born in the mid '80s, and I grew up in all throughout the '90s. So and even in the '90s they were still putting some costumes out like that every now and then. But by the mid '90s they were kind of gone, and they were Halloween costumes for kids were kind of evolving at that point. Um, but just definitely cool that they decided to throw the Godzilla costume in there, to add to that series. Just yeah, I'm very very excited for that. Um, but guys, I guess that is it for me, and that is it for Godzilla Fest. I really, really enjoyed doing this so much. And this is the first time I've ever done anything like this where I did 3 consecutive streams, 3 days in a row. But just, I kind of had to do that because with there being 15 movies in the Showa era to talk about, I had to split it up, that way for five movies each day to kind of make these streams not so extensive. But just really, like I said, I really enjoyed going over these movies with you guys because this was a huge staple for my childhood and just just huge influence on me really getting involved with that whole kaiju genre and just everything that it influenced. Um, it's just been a very important part of my life, and I'm just glad to be here on YouTube sharing my passion for it with you guys. And I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I have. I appreciate any of you guys checking this out, watching these videos with me, hearing me ramble on about this stuff. But yeah, I do this because I love it. I love talking about these movies. I love just talking about things I enjoy. It's really what gets me away from the real world, guys. Because the real world can suck sometimes. So if you can kind of find a place in your life where you can, where there's things that you enjoy and you enjoy talking about them, definitely, I advise to find some kind of goal for like that for yourselves. Um, and because this whole series that I started here since the beginning of this year, on YouTube, has really changed how I look at things, and I've had so much fun um, with this for sure, and just been it's been so fun, talking with you guys about these movies, not just the Godzilla films, but all of these films, that I've been covering, since the beginning of this year. Um, and one second, guys, I think my thing froze up again. Let me see if I can fix this. Uh, all right, there we go. Sorry about that, but yeah, like I was saying, man, this is just a thing that I love to do, and it just takes me away from the real world. And yeah, thanks, man. You keep doing your thing. I appreciate that. I absolutely will, man. And movies are the best drug for me as well. Love talk. Yeah, man. I mean, that's something, and that's the reason why I go to these conventions and stuff too, man. Because that's such a huge outlet for me as well, is going to these conventions and meeting all these like-minded people that love the same types of movies that I do and love talking about them just as much as I do. But yeah, just just know that I appreciate all of you guys for just giving me a part of your time and just checking out these videos that I'm doing. I just want to thank everyone that has watched this live and has been here in the chat with me tonight. Or if you're watching this on replay, I want to thank you guys as well. Which conventions do I? So I mostly just go to horror conventions, but there's a few in like kind of close to me that I'll go to as well every now and then. I'll go to like Horror Hound. That's my favorite convention, Horror Hound Weekend in Cincinnati. Scarefest in Lexington, Kentucky. FrankenCon, which is kind of they're a newer show. This is just their fourth year, but I've been going ever since they started out in their first year. It's a smaller show, but it has a really old school vibe to it when it comes to conventions, and it's very laid back. It's not super crowded or anything, but they focus on a lot of like cult film type stuff. I love it. So like I said, that's FrankenCon. It's in Knoxville, Tennessee. The next FrankenCon is actually coming up in May. I think it's like the second week of May or something. You can go to FrankenConTN.com, like TN like Tennessee. So FrankenConTN.com, and you can just check out all the information, all the guests, and everything they got planned for that show. Like I said, it's coming up in May, so it's very close. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I usually just go for the day, like the one day, which is on Saturday, and yeah, I love great group of guys that do that show as well. But I also do well. I hadn't done it in several years, but I went to it earlier this year, Lexington Comic Con in Lexington, Kentucky. They're kind of more like pop culture, kind of a variety of all different types of genres. It's a huge show. But yeah, this is the first year I went in a while because my favorite wrestler of all time, Sting, was there, and yeah, I didn't want to miss that because this is his last year that he's doing appearances in the makeup, and God, it was so worth it. I love it. But and there's a few other in Kingsport, Tennessee that I'm going to. One is a horror convention, so it's called Smoky Mountain Terror. And the same people that put that show on also do a Smoky Mountain Fan Fest, which is more of a larger, like pop culture, all types of genre type show. And that's in September, like the week before Horror Hound Weekend. this year in September. So I'm gonna try to hit up both of those shows because I don't like to miss Horror Hound. So I know I'm gonna go to Horror Hound for sure. But Smoky Mountain Fan Fest, I definitely want to try to go to it as well because they're going to be having the first ever My Name Is Earl reunion, and that's one of my all-time favorite TV shows. And just for them to have the whole cast there is going to be awesome. But yeah, I go to a lot of different ones, man. And you say you live in Oklahoma, and we have a great horror con. I go to Texas Frightmare Weekend. See, I've always wanted to go to Texas Frightmare Weekend, man. But that's way out there in Texas, man, and just that's a that's definitely a ways for me here in southeastern Kentucky. Um, I have a friend. He's actually my son's godfather, who lives in Corpus Christi, Texas, and he has a company called Fast Custom Shirts. So a lot of people know him as T-Shirt Joe. His name is Joe Garcia, and he used to travel by car to set up as a vendor at several different Kentucky shows years ago. And I think he said it was like an 18-hour drive or something from Corpus Christi to the different locations in Kentucky that he was coming to as a vendor. So I guess that really took a toll on him because he's not been here in a while as a vendor, but I still do keep up with him regularly, and I'd love to see him at some point come here and do a show again. Um, and you said Smoky Mountain Terror looks good. I keep saying, yeah. I mean, they got a Lost Boys thing going. They got Twilight, if you like that stuff, I think is one of the things they're doing, and just I think like a Walking Dead thing, and Eli Roth's going to be there, Ty West. They're going to have like a sort of a little Terminator franchise reunion with Michael Biehn and Edward Furlong. Um, I think they're going to have a few wrestling guests like Kane and the Hardy Boys. So yeah, they got a lot of stuff that's going on. They've been really consistent with those announcements. So yeah, it looks definitely good. Um, yeah, man, I appreciate that. If you ever out, yeah, definitely. If you see me at a con, if you're ever out this way, you stop me, say hi, and we can bullshit for a while or something. But again, I appreciate you for being here, man. I appreciate you checking out the stream. But guys, just drop me a comment below after this video is done, and let me know what your favorite of these five. If you've seen these movies, let me know what your favorite of these five movies were that I talked about, or who your favorite monster is, and if you've not seen the movies that I've talked about, go watch them, and then come back and let me know what you enjoyed about them. And if again, as always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button to catch more videos from me like this one, and just also to click that bell for any kind of future notifications of videos I'll be doing. So with this 500 movies in 2025 series, I typically do them twice a week. Sometimes I change things up. I might just do it once. In this case, I did three videos in 1 week: Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's always kind of like up in the air. It's always changing what I'm doing, but like definitely just click that bell for any kind of future notifications. Let you know that I have a new video out. And just thank you guys for everything. And I really hope you enjoyed Godzilla Fest. And just with all that said, I'm Crater. This is CraterMania. I love you guys, and have a good night.